series, Careers During COVID-19, helping our audience understand how this pandemic is impacting workplaces and careers. Today, I am very delighted to be joined by David Bearfield, who is the head of HR for the United Nations Development Program, which employs some thousands of people working all over the world. David is joining us from his home in New York, where he is based. So David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, pleasure.
So as I mentioned, you can probably correct me on the numbers, but you employ thousands of people working, I think, in over 170 countries around the world.
About 18,000 altogether.
Wow. Yeah. So how is everyone doing, and how has this impacted your work and your people to date?
I think very, very differently in all kinds of ways. To be honest, when we started experiencing this in New York in March, obviously, and suddenly from one day to the next, my son's school closed, and we were told because a teacher had COVID, or they thought they had. So then we were just told as parents to stay at home as a precautionary measure, and then we never went back. But that wasn't the beginning of the story. Actually, we got our staff in our office in Beijing were the first to experience this back in January. So they've kind of already gone through the whole wave and have come back to work. And then progressive waves are starting to impact around the world in different ways. And of course, you have your impact in a place like New York, where you found yourself what was being described as the epicenter of COVID for a while. And I have to say that's kind of quite unnerving. But then we think about our colleagues in really difficult places, in real crisis settings. We had a meeting to discuss how we could help our colleagues based in Yemen just last week. And so if you kind of think you're in a difficult situation in New York, you're rapidly disabused of that, because we've got people who are really, really having a tough time, and where there's no backup in terms of healthcare for them. It's very, very difficult. So it's really impacting, and I think, like many of the other UN organizations, UNDP, is, to use the cliche, is kind of when the going gets tough, the tough get going, or in this case, the tough stay. Because when other people, have left town, we need our people to stay and to continue delivering in the most challenging of circumstances. So it's really difficult for them. And our job, and my job running HR, is to help them do their job. And that's been the focus of what we're doing. So some staff in some countries are little affected. Many people are moderately affected, and some people, it's really, really difficult.
Yeah, and I imagine you mentioned is first impacting your teams in China and different places, or in different places in this epidemic, and where they are in managing it. So have you been able to learn some lessons from your colleagues that have kind of been there and are heading back into the office to share, and how are you sharing that information and knowledge?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think that's really informing us as we go along. So what was really helpful is that when the pandemic started to hit globally, we'd already had the experience of what was happening in Beijing, but also in a few other locations such as Pyongyang, which was particularly hard hit. We only have a small team, so we were able to learn quickly what have we done, what have worked, what haven't worked, how staff coped, what do people need to help. So I think that helped us, get moving very quickly on the HR front.
And so when you joined UNDP as head HR, was that 2 years ago now?
Almost exactly 2 years. Yeah, this week.
Okay. Great. Well, I know, and you joined from EPSO, where you had really revamped a lot of how they do recruitment there. And you also sought to really transform what many may have seen as a maybe dated hiring and workplace practices. When my colleagues, Amy Lieberman, I believe, interviewed you last fall to hear about what you're working on. And you created this new People for 2030 strategy, and part of the goal is to really make the workplace fit for a modern era, being able to attract younger talent that might be looking for a more agile workplace, calls for more flexibility and remote work and such. So how has this moment, either inhibited or spurred some of these ideas and things you've been trying to push through with this new people strategy?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I mean, I think it's certainly demonstrated why we need people for 2030. Right? It's, I think what's happening now is accelerating the pace of change. Everyone's talking about this awful cliche, the new normal, whatever that means. But in reality, I think it means there are lots of trends and tendencies out there that often impact much more slowly on the public sector, but actually it's accelerating all of that. So it's demonstrating very clearly that the things that we are doing with People 2030 are the right things, but we need to, we really need to get on and do them, which we are doing. I mean, we had a global town hall this morning headed by our administrator, Achim Steiner, and he was talking again about, how we really need people to stay, to deliver, talked about the great work people were doing, but equally we're able to say, here are all the things that we're helping you. And one of the key things from People for 2030, he actually announced this morning, is to say, you've shown your commitment to our organization by staying in tough circumstances and carrying on with the job. And in return, we're going to end the practice of annual contracts for fixed-term contract staff. And from 1st of January next year, we're moving to 2-year contracts. And I think in a time where obviously everyone's concerned about finance and budget going forward, that's a really powerful commitment to the staff, a very powerful commitment from the very top of the organization to say, this is what we want from you, but here's our commitment to you. So that's, one of the key things. And we're working on a huge range of others. And one thing I was really happy that we did at the beginning of this year was our commitment to only have paid internships, which I think is crucial. And we're working really faster and faster. Actually, it's kind of just speeding time up the last 3 months, trying to push ahead with as many of the things in our people strategy. So implementing a new mobility policy, new recruitment strategy, procuring new IT tools to be able to really deliver best-in-class recruitment and selection methods for UNDP, a new career framework, a whole range of different things. And we've just seen that we need it kind of even faster. So people have been working feverishly from home, different places to deliver all of this.
No rest for the weary right now, for sure, right?
No, not much. But it's exciting, to be honest, and what we've also realized we have to do, one thing that I have to say has amazed me in the last few months working for UNDP, because you think it's an international organization, it's very big, 170 countries, and you wouldn't normally expect to use the words agility and speed. And what I have to say as an HR person left me really amazed is how fast this organization has just turned around and is delivering new programs and tools to help countries cope with COVID and cope with the recovery from it already. It's amazing to see the thinking, the organization agility to do that. You'd think you were working in a startup, not a massive international organization. What we need to do as well is to translate that thinking into operations, in particular to human resources. And one of the things we were able to do was to really quickly say, what do our staff need right now to be able to carry on? So we've taken dozens of measures, suspending or modifying some of the rules on teleworking, paying salaries early, giving staff salary advances because suddenly the prices of food in quite a lot of developing countries rocketed overnight and people couldn't buy food, flexibility about taking leave. One of the things I was really happy with is we were able to extend telehealth facility to all of our staff, including our contract staff everywhere in the world. So if people were ill, they had, whether it's COVID or not, they have unlimited access to telehealth with medical practitioners in a network spanning the world. So not only, did they not have to worry about not having access to healthcare, they didn't have to put themselves by going to a clinic where they may think they were going to be risky of being infected or overburdening already struggling healthcare systems. And we were able to get a contract procured and signed and delivered in 10 days together with the rest of the UN system. But we're offering that to all of our staff globally. And I think, that's the kind of thing that really reassures people and helps them. And that's the kind of agility I wouldn't have expected when I came here 2 years ago. And I have to say, I'm really impressed by it.
That's great. How has the mental health toll been? I mean, you have your staff working on front lines in many places around the world where already sure mental health is a top concern, but we add a pandemic on top of it. Goodness, what are you doing to acknowledge that challenge?
Yeah. We have a lot of additional training that we've made available both to staff and to managers, a whole range of seminars that we've been putting out there as webinars on a weekly basis. And we've also got a team of, or different teams of counsellors who are there offering support to people. So we've been doing quite a lot and quite a lot of specialist training courses, also helping managers. One good example we did together with UNOPS and UNDP was a Peace on Purpose event, which was about self-compassion for leaders and psychological safety for teams. So it's really about saying how mindful self-awareness helps managers understand what they're going through, but so they can also see that in their staff and help them because of the really crucial role they have. It's really important to be compassionate to people and understand. It's wherever you are, it's difficult, right? There's people, unfortunately, there are a few of our colleagues in UNDP have sadly died of COVID. And of course, that has a big effect, a devastating effect on their families. But it also really affects the colleagues in the country office team. And so we need to reach out and help them. But also just kind of lots of our other staff who are suddenly cut off completely from family and friends overseas. And that's okay if things are all right, but it's not okay when it isn't. And suddenly people felt, even though I was thousands of kilometers away, I could always get on a plane if I had to, and I'd be there tomorrow. And suddenly you can't. And then when family members get ill or die, that's very tough. And I know quite a lot of our staff have really struggled with that one. And it's very hard. But I think they're getting a lot of support from their own teams, their colleagues who are managers, kind of a surrogate family who are around them and helping. And that's really important too.
That's great. So you're in a large agency that still has that familial feel where everyone's looking out for each other, sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, you touched on this a little bit, but what have been the lessons learned you hope to incorporate longer term in your organization? You mentioned being able to move much more quickly and break through some of the bureaucracy that maybe slows down the ability to move things along quickly. What are some of the things that you hope that you're able to carry forward based from this experience?
Well, those things I think are really important for the organization. And some of the other things I think obviously, affect everyone. People have seen the power of technology to enable flexible working, which is really important. And it's hugely important for organizations such as the UN or UNDP, because it means in the future you could actually give developing countries access to a much wider pool of talent if people can actually collaborate virtually rather than the traditional model, which is based on you go there. Now people might need to go there sometimes, but not all the time, and there is a huge population of people who are just physically not able to go but could work virtually. And I think that's overcome a lot of skepticism to see just how much you can do virtually. I think it's probably going to cut many international organizations' business travel bills as well. Again, people were skeptical. How can you really have a meaningful interaction with people over a screen? Actually, you can. And I've seen that with the human resources team, because just over a third of our team are in Copenhagen and the rest are in New York. And it's actually, they often feel very cut off and isolated. And we're all in the meeting in New York and they're in a table with a video, but you don't really see the people and they can't participate. For the first time, we're having our town hall meetings on Zoom. Everyone participates in an equal footing. And we had a meeting with all of our staff week before last to talk about how did they feel about this and the impact of COVID. And of course, there are lots of negative things, but there are an awful lot of positive things. So people are not wasting time traveling to work. People are not distracted at home. So staff are saying to me, they work much more efficiently from home. There are downsides if it's all the time, of course, and it's coupled with a lockdown. And there are issues about, where do you draw the line between private time and work time? But there are some positive things, and people have got to know each other much more. And we've been meeting every 2 weeks. And people enjoy it rather than saying, oh, it's a meeting for everyone, I'm going to waste my time. Sometimes we just had a quiz. But lots of the time, we've been able to focus on how is this helping us work together as a team. And people are now saying, once all of this is finished, we want to carry on doing it this way. and it's actually helping people. And I can see, certainly in my team, I would say productivity has gone up. People have been really focused, partly because we understand, that people's lives can sometimes depend on what we do, but people have really got going. So I think there are massive lessons for organizational culture. And also in public sector organizations everywhere, we tend to be quite hierarchical. But actually, when you strip away, the office and the suit and the tie and all the rest of it, you're just a person in a living room or a makeshift office in a bedroom like everyone else, with kids interrupting, cats and dogs. And actually, I think people see colleagues as real people more than just that you see in the office every day. And I think people are a bit more authentic. And I really like that as well. And I think that is actually going to change our office culture to a much more equal, less hierarchical one.
Yeah, it really is an equalizer, as you say. And I remember hearing advice even before all of this, that if one person needs to join a meeting remote, everyone should. And I've really seen that put into practice, as you say, having everyone on their individual screens rather than being this one voice trying to butt into a conversation of people are all together. I think really does foster that collaboration when you are dealing with global distributed teams.
Absolutely.
So,
And the other observation people have made is suddenly meetings start on time and finish on time. People are not rolling in 15 minutes late, and then the meeting drifts on for hours. It starts at 10 or whatever, finishes 11. That's it. It's amazing. I mean, that's a huge productivity gain, actually. And people hate wasting their time in long meetings that don't achieve stuff. So I think there are some positives that we need to take forward, and for the organization as a whole, ultimately we're going to have to think, how much is there a paradigm shift for international organizations, NGOs, anyone working in this space? Traditionally, it's all been about serving physically in a duty station. Pay has been traditionally around where you're serving and where you come from. All of these things, if we begin to move to at least some more virtual work, of course, there's going to be a massive need for presence in countries when you're trying to help people. But it gives you that degree of additional flexibility that probably we didn't think we had before.
Yeah, that's great. And I find that really fascinating, seeing how when you truly have a global marketplace of talent, how that can really open up possibilities for people really anywhere to work on these challenges. And I think traditionally it's been kind of driven by people are coming from more donor countries that are taking the lead. And I think this moment shows that that model doesn't necessarily work or make sense. And it'll be interesting to see what this does to disrupt that talent marketplace for the better. So speaking of that, you mentioned, recruitment still going. So how has this impacted your hiring, if any? Has it slowed it down, sped it up, have different profiles you need as a result of responding? What is your current recruitment priorities right now?
Well, we have still been hiring, so it's not like we've got any kind of block on recruitment, because clearly there are some skills we might need now, for example, in technology or different things to respond to the crisis and to deliver some of the new program offerings that we're putting together. So we're still hiring for different positions. We will see what the financial impact of COVID is going to be. Clearly, there will be an impact on the international public sector for sure. But there are lots of important projects where donor countries are helping meet immediate needs. So we're rising to the challenge of delivering that. I think as we move forward, we're going to have to continue to offer value for money, the best talents that we can have, and that's going to be a huge challenge. People have been talking for years about the global war for talent, but the next generation, or now the present generation job seekers, I think want something quite different from previous generations, from mine. And now is the time to make sure that we're really fit for purpose so we can attract those people. And that's what we've been focusing over the last months in UNDP. So we've been putting together what we call in the HR jargon an employee value proposition. So what it is that is a compelling reason why somebody should want to come and work for UNDP. what it is we're offering, what can they expect, and to make sure that the reality of people's experience actually meets up with the promise. And I think we have just the most compelling reasons to come here, and people nowadays want the opportunity to make a real positive difference, for example, but we haven't gone out and sold that in the past. We've maybe relied on word of mouth, but to really put that in a very positive, very clear written down statement, and then to roll out a recruitment marketing strategy based around that is really important. And then to change the recruitment processes so we can bring those people, once we've attracted them, we can bring them on board really quickly, in days or weeks rather than months. So these are all the things that we're working on right now while we're all locked down. So I hope by the end of this year we'll really see some very, very powerful changes.
That's great. And I know you've talked before about how maybe younger generations are driven more of anything of purpose and wanting to make an impact in their career and jobs. And maybe UN system has taken a little bit for granted that they are the natural place where you can do that. And there are groups, different competitors out there now that you probably are competing for talent that maybe do move quicker and faster. So it's great to hear that you're thinking about how you reorient the way you do hiring so that you can compete for this talent that, as you say, you have probably one of the most compelling purposes out of any employer out there. Yeah,
no, I find it really amazing. And, and it does sound a bit cheesy, but when you get to the organization, as I come to UNDP now 2 years ago, and I have to say, I really was struck, by how purpose-driven people are. Everyone you meet there has really got that sense of purpose. Sure, there's things that people can get frustrated about every day working in an international organization, but ultimately, really, really purpose-driven, committed set of people. I have to say, it's that's quite motivating. It sounds cheesy, but actually, it's quite genuine, And when you see so many people who are fired up to go and help make other people's lives better, it kind of, whatever you're working on, it's kind of infectious. Maybe that's not the word to use right now, but
right.
Commitment.
Well, it sounds like it's been helpful in bringing people together in this moment. So
absolutely. And it's enough, and it is there, and that's enough, I think, to sustain an organization through the tough times that we're experiencing at the moment. Because if you don't have that sense of purpose, and then suddenly things get really tough, people will drift away, and that's not what we see at all. Quite the opposite.
And for any members of our audience that are interested in pursuing a job or career with UNDP, what advice would you have for them? What do you look for in hiring? How can they stand out when trying to apply to your organization?
Well, I think it's really looking very carefully at what we want and targeting your applications, at a particular job where you really do meet, the criteria. I think you get a lot of people simply want to work for UNDP. So we get a huge number of applicants for every job. But actually, if you read them carefully, a lot of people just want to work for UNDP. That's nice, but really, I would encourage people to think very much about the position that they're applying for and be a good match. But to be able to get that, I think, get to that, it's really important to get different kinds of professional experience as well, and get yourself at some point out into the field, whether it's as a volunteer, as an intern, whatever it is, if you're starting out, but to get hands-on experience in the field. And I think that's what some of the people, lack as well. And that demonstrates, I think, if you want to come and work for a field-based organization, that you've actually spent some time doing that yourself. So there would be a couple of pieces of advice. And I say we do offer, paid internships, and we are also looking at, in addition to the JPO program, which is also a fantastic way to start and to get into the organization. We're looking at putting together a new entry-level program for fresh graduates. We haven't adopted it yet, but we're working very actively on proposals for that. So I hope that that's something we could introduce next year. Would be a clear entry path to the organization.
Yeah, I'm sure that's welcome news, particularly for any recent graduates and such who are nervous about the job climate they are entering. we did have a question from our audience. This is more specifically around UNV, UN volunteers. But do you know, and have you all maybe collaborated with them in seeing if there's an increase in digital online volunteering? And are you all either through volunteers or interns, consultants, seeing more people being able to do that, but digitally from wherever they are?
Definitely, and that's definitely a core part of UNV's offering, and they've grown hugely over recent years. And this is a fantastic way of putting people from wherever they happen to be in a position where they can help without having to go there. Indeed, we're for human resources, we're going to be using some digital UNV people to offer counselling to our staff in the field, which you can obviously do, remotely. So we make use of it ourselves. So absolutely, that's a great way to offer your skills and services.
And would you say that's also a good way to build some of the skills and experience to make you more attractive for some internal positions at UNDP or other UN agencies down the line?
Most definitely, yeah, and that's exactly what I was referring to in terms of getting that experience, and practical experience either on the ground or virtually. That's still great. To demonstrate, I think, experience, but to build that practical experience alongside some of the other soft skills that we're looking for.
Great. Well, thank you, David. Before we go, just what are you most looking forward to getting back to when this is past us?
A haircut. Yeah, I mean, just being able to go out and meet friends, but hopefully also to get back home to the family, because it's been a long time. But the first thing I'll probably do is get a haircut. It's getting desperate.
Yeah, mine's getting there too. So.
I never thought I'd look forward to a haircut in my life, but there we are.
Great. Well, thank you so much, David, for taking the time to chat with us today. Thank you for those of you who tuned in. If you are interested in learning more about how workplaces and careers are evolving this time, please check out more videos in this series and stay tuned for more to come. If you are looking for a job or new career opportunities, do recommend you consider Devex Career Account, which gives you access to jobs and career advice and online events and more that'll help you advance in your global development career. But again, in the meantime, thank you, David, and thank you for everyone who tuned in.
Thank you so much.
Stay safe and healthy. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.